how we can make plastics environment friendly, I would say that we need to go back to the basics. Reduce, reuse, recycling. There is no shortcut. If we keep to the basics, if we keep to the waste management hierarchy, there will be wonders.
Of course, we can transform plastic into environmental friendly materials. In the textile industry, we have a technology to convert used PET bottles to polyester yarns. I think with the correct innovation, with the correct technology, we can transform plastic into a eco-friendly or more sustainable materials.
Prevention, removal, and the reduction. How you can reduce your plastic consumption. When you go shopping, take a reusable bag. When you go out, have your own water bottle. So likewise, there are so much of opportunities, so much of products freely available in the environment that we can reduce 30 to 40% of plastic consumption.
This is very momentum for us because I think in terms of the tourism industry, we were the first in this nation to kind of spearhead this project and this initiative. So measuring is possible, but as a nation, we need a strategic plan. We need a plan to measure, and most oftenly, not every year, but every month maybe. How do we do that? We need more solutions. Yeah.
Ending plastic pollution is everyone's responsibility, and that's the topic of LMD's 2025 World Environment Day panel discussion. Stay tuned.
In a world where every stitch counts, the responsible choices that we make today help us weave a better and sustainable tomorrow. At Hirdaramani, we will always continue to put the future first.
Hello and welcome to LMD's 2025 World Environment Day panel discussion. This year's theme for World Environment Day is ending plastic pollution, and we've got together a team of experts and enthusiasts who are committed to the mission. And if I introduce them, starting from my right, we have Shanez Wijesinghe, the Vice President, Sustainability, Health and Safety, Data Privacy and Quality Assurance at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. Welcome, Shanez. Then we've got Roshan Narasinghe, who has worked as Deputy Chief of Party of USAID Ocean Plastics Reduction Activity. Hi, Roshan. Then we have Leonie Vaas, the General Manager of Sustainability at Hirdaramani Apparel. Nice to have you, Leonie. And then finally, we have Nishshanka the Silva, the founder of Zero Plastic Movement. Hi, Nishshanka. So to start off our discussion, I'd like to start with you, Nishshanka. How do you see ending plastic pollution as a theme, as being relevant to Sri Lanka? What is the local scenario?
Well, if you look at the local scenario, the most important thing, Sri Lanka doesn't produce any plastic.
That's good.
We don't produce any plastic. We just pay dollars and import plastic pebbles and produce all the plastic products. That's the first thing that we need to understand. And then we, Sri Lanka, literally produce 1,000 metric tons of plastic waste daily. 1,000 metric tons of plastic waste daily. And if we go down into the numbers, so we Sri Lankan use nearly 20 million shopping bags per day and 15 million lunch sheets per day and 10 million PET bottles per day. So now look at the total number of recycling. It is just 5% of plastic being recycled here in Sri Lanka. So now you understand the problem. So we import so much of plastic and we use so much of plastic, and end of the day, we just recycle only 5%. So 95% of plastic become a waste that will be ended up in the environment, and some goes to the incinerations. So that's the prime problem that we need to understand. So not only that, it's just forget the plastic bags and the lunch sheets. Just look at your household, how much of plastic we are using. If you look at 30, 40 years back, we had a kind of ecosystem that we had a very beautiful house with eco-friendly products. But now your broom is plastic. Your cutleries are plastic, your flowers are plastic, your bottles are plastic, your decorations are plastic. most of items are plastic. So that's the problem that we need to understand. We have become a plastic people, and we have become a plastic nation. So, that's the huge problem that right now, even throughout the Clean Sri Lanka project, that the government wants to fix it. And the global theme, like ending plastic pollution, I'm sure that they will give a momentum to the Sri Lankan ecosystem, to the government, to the CSOs, to the corporates, to do more and more to address the plastic problem. So literally we have, if I give you a little experience that we have done as Zero Plastic Movement. So we have done more than 1,000 cleanups across the country, 1,000 cleanups plus. And we have 11,000 volunteers working everywhere in the country. So we have done cleanups in Sigiriya Mountain, Lion Rock. So every cleanups, we have done 3 cleanups. Every cleanups, we found nearly 2 truckload of plastic surrounding the Lion Rock. So we made the plastic sculpture using those plastic. It is in the BMICH. So, I always ask my audience, can you tell me one single road? Can you tell me one single lake? Can you tell me one single beach without plastic? No. So literally we are in a crisis. We are in a plastic problem, and that needs to be addressed.
That's a very, very gloomy picture and a very scary picture regarding that. I'm going to talk to you, Shanez, because you come from the corporate angle. Nishshanka was giving us a general overview of the entire nation. Looking at it from a corporate setting, how is the local scenario like?
Firstly, Ronnie, I think this year's theme for Environment Day is absolutely apt and deeply resonates with the current Sri Lankan environmental challenges. Because if you take in terms of numbers, I believe we use over 1.5 million metric tons of plastic annually in this nation. And like Nishshanka said, we only recycle, and what gets really disposed in the through the right channels is almost like a single digit. Now that's a problem. That's a problem. We have many great programs that have been launched. One is a Clean Sri Lanka program, and the other one is, you can even say, the Zero Plastic Movement. But is that enough? Is that enough? This country is heavily dependent on tourism, right? We have beautiful beaches, but pollution everywhere. Plastic is something we need to really eradicate. I won't say that we can eradicate it 100% in terms of usage, but we got to have the right channels to dispose it so that it does not get into the environment in the wrong way. Yeah. So for me, I think in terms of the tourism industry, this year's theme is absolutely apt for Sri Lanka. Yeah.
So it's a start. It's a start. Roshan, you have experience working in reducing the plastics in the oceans. How is the picture looking like?
Yeah, thank you, Ruandi. If I may build on what Nishshanka and Shanez already said, like looking at the theme of this year World Environment Day, ending plastic pollutions. If I go back to the history, in 2018, we had the same theme, like similar theme on plastics. The theme of the World Environment Day in 2018 was beating the plastic pollution. Then again, in 2023, we talked about solution for plastic waste as the theme for World Environment Day. 2025, we are here to talk about ending plastic waste. In 2020, World Wildlife Fund and Boston Consultancy Group, and they did a survey to find out what are the major environmental concerns in the world and what are the top 3. Number 1, climate change. Number 2, plastic waste. And number 3 is water pollution. That is globally. When it comes to Asia, the most pressing environmental issue was plastic waste at the first place. So all this go on to show one thing, that plastic waste is becoming increasingly growing concern among the global situations. So this year, the theme is coming at the right time, because in 2 months down the line, the world will be meeting again in Switzerland to discuss on the plastic treaty agreement that you touched on. And just to remind you, in 2021, the world, all the members of UN, they agreed to have a legally binding plastic agreement by 2024. All the 193 members of the UN, they agreed to have a legally binding agreement by 2024. But unfortunately, we as a world, we all failed. The negotiations continue. The tricky part is when we talking about plastic negotiations and a legally binding treaty, we need to look at entire plastic value chain. There is so much hype on recycling, but if you look at the problem, the recycling is not going to be the solution. It could be a solution, but it is only a part of whole package. And as I think also Nishshanka mentioned about the lower recycling rate, the global recycling rate is single digit. It is 9%. And we have generated over 8 billion tons of plastic waste. And from that, we've recycled up to this point in time only 9%. And going back to your question on how the theme resonates with local actions, what we as a nation do in Sri Lanka to address the plastic waste issue. I think when it comes to local actions, the Bible of plastic waste actions is the Ministry of Environment developed National Action Plan for Plastic Waste Management covering the period from 2021 to 2030. And this action plan has 16 goals, short term, medium term, and long terms. I would say that some of the goals are very ambitious. Then there is corporate actions. Corporate actions on the voluntary sides, EPR actions, then we have some credible solutions, some innovative solutions we see in Sri Lanka. If I quote one or two solutions, Vega Innovations, they developed refillable vending machines. The advantage there is consumers, they can bring their own containers and get the container refilled with whatever home liquid or whatever body washes that they want at the refillable vending machine. There are dual advantages. Number one, there is no packaging involved. Upstream solution, reducing the packaging usage. And the number two, there is an economic incentive. The price will be 20% lesser than off the shelf product. So there is an advantage. And similarly, another solution that I can quote, edible plastic cups and edible spoons. That's developed by a local entrepreneur called Waffle Boy, and it's already in the market. And scalable solution. I think there are certain things happening. Then we see civil society and youth movements, groups like Zero Plastic, NGOs, they are pretty much active. And then the donor support. If you look at the donor landscape, all the donors from USAID, EU, GIZ, JICA, OICA, all the donors are active in the plastic space. And there are so many active programs. And if I may answer your question in a one sentence, what is happening right now when it comes to addressing plastic waste actions in Sri Lanka? The actions happening right now are necessary, but if someone asks me whether they are adequate, my response is actions are necessary. The current actions are necessary, but they are not sufficient.
Thank you, Roshan. I think we established the issue with Nishshanka and Shanez, and Roshan, you started talking about the solutions and the actions that need to be taken. Leonie, if I ask you, there's so much that countries can and should do, and it ranges from protecting the oceans to EPR. The spectrum is very broad. If we are to pick, this might be unfair to say, if we are to pick one thing that Sri Lanka should focus on the most, what would it be and why?
Yes, Ruandi, in your question, I think you have mentioned the triple planetary crisis, the climate action, the biodiversity loss, and the pollution caused by the production and consumption. So all these topics are very important, but I'll take only one, that is climate action. So as a country, we made a commitment under the 2015 Paris Agreement to reduce our national greenhouse gas emission by 14.5% by 2030, and also to achieve our net zero target by 2050. That is focusing on both mitigation and adaptation strategies. So to achieve this target, the execution plan is clearly mentioned in the National Determined Contribution, or the NDCs. Based on the NDCs, the significant greenhouse gas emission sectors in Sri Lanka, that is energy sector, transportation sector, agriculture, and the manufacturing sector. So it's really important for all of these sectors and the private sector. We have to support to achieve these national targets. So this is where the science-based target initiatives or SPTI comes in, because the science-based target initiative, it helps especially the corporate sector, the private sector, to measure their greenhouse gas emission and set science-based targets to minimize how they are going to reduce their emissions, right? So so let me take the apparel and textile industry as an example. One of the largest manufacturer and also one of the largest exporters in Sri Lanka. So and also most of the apparel industries now, we work with Europe and North American brands. So we have to align with the national target as well as the global scenario. So in our sector, most of the apparel manufacturers, they have taken steps to reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions. So as an example, at Hirdaramani, we have committed to the science-based target initiatives in 2022, and we were the first in Sri Lanka to get the net zero target approvals from the SPTI. So now we have both the near-term targets as well as net zero target. So near-term target is to reduce all three scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3 by 2033. And our net zero target is pretty much aligned with the country's target to achieve the net zero by 2050. And also we are about to launch our decarbonization strategy. So with we should understand that not only the national, all the private sector, we should support to achieve the national target.
It's time now to take a short break, but we'll soon be back. Stay tuned.
The latest issue of Green Cover, published to commemorate World Environment Day, is now available at lmdmall.lk. You can also access the digital version on Press Reader, Maxter, our social media platforms, and WhatsApp.
Welcome back to LMD's 2025 World Environment Day panel discussion. I think for my next question, I'm going to ask something from Leonie and Roshan. When plastics first came into this world, it was considered like a fantastic solution, but now it's, of course, a fantastic pollution avenue. But is it fair to say that all plastics are bad, or can we actually use it in a more environmentally friendly way? I would maybe ask Roshan first. Yes.
Yeah, Rovindra, I think that's a $1 million question. You're asking, like, what's the kind of holy grail solution we have for plastics? But if you go down the history, plastic was the solution for the environmental problems at the time. Because in 1860s, when the plastics was first invented, the first form of plastics, that was invented in order to save elephants. Because at the time in the US, there was increasing use of billiard balls, which was made out of ivory from tuskers. So in order to save elephants, the solution was plastics. But after 200 years, where we are, now we need to save elephants from plastics. That's how ironic the history. Yeah, plastic is a fantastic material. It's once told a miracle material. That's right, because there are so many characteristics which we which we need. Plastics durable, plastics long lasting, flexible. There are so many qualities. But if we look at down the value chain, after one point, particularly after the consumption stage, the durability of plastics become a problem because they stay longer in the environment, creating environmental, social, and economic issues as well as health issues. So even despite that bright side of the plastics being a petrochemical based products, it has natural environmental issues, because we know that petrochemical products linked to climate change, and the plastic sector, whole plastic industry is responsible for 3 to 4% of global greenhouse gas emission. And if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, the whole plastics industry emitted 1.8 billion tons of greenhouse gases, which is a significant number. And that number is projected to increase around 15 to 20% by 2050, from current level of 4% to around 20% by 2050. So that's a huge growth forecast, and see the environmental repercussions that come along with it. And how, if I go back to the question, looking at the Sri Lankan situation, what we can do in order to ensure plastics are environmental friendly. I may propose actions along 4 pillars. The first one, better enforcement of rules and regulations. I think we are one of the countries with highest number of environmental regulations in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, we
That
are
is
one of the
new.
countries. But when it comes to enforcement, that's where the loophole. The enforcement is lagging. And even there, I think Nishshanka may speak about that. There are some single-use plastic bans, but they are not enforced because of a variety of reasons. And therefore, I think enforcement is necessary. And then the EPR under the first pillar, enforcement, EPR. And third area I propose, it's something proactive. And if you look at particularly PET recycling, the gold standard of PET recycling is food grade bottle to bottle recycling. It's happening in India. India has over 15 bottle to bottle recycling plants. It's happening in Bangladesh. It's happening in Thailand, Indonesia. That's the gold standard, highest value addition of PET recycling. But unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, because of the food and health regulations, we can't use recyclates in food grade packaging. It's a barrier. And these policymakers can be proactive and get the regulations revised in order to facilitate bottle to bottle recycling in Sri Lanka. And the second pillar, first one is about better enforcement of rules and regulations. The second pillar about better support for upstream innovations, downstream innovations, recycling businesses, and plastic alternatives. And the third pillar is support for improve human capital and expand the waste management service delivery model. This is basically focusing on local authority based collection system. We see that at certain points, one local authority, somewhere in down south or maybe whatever part, they are doing a fantastic collection program. But after maybe 1 year or maybe 2 years, because of variety of reasons, could be a person responsible for that program is transferred to a different local authority, or he resigned or whatever reason, the whole program collapsed. So because of that, I think there has to be improvement in human capital, particularly in the government sector, local authority sector, in order to improve the overall waste management situation. And the final pillar I am proposing is incentive-based behavior changes around consumption and disposal. In summary, if I may summarize my answer, how we can make plastics environment friendly, I would say that we need to go back to the basics. What is the basic? That is waste management hierarchy. Reduce, reuse, recycling. There is no shortcut. If we keep to the basics, if we keep to the waste management hierarchy, there will be wonders. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. Leonie, if I turn to you, what are your thoughts on how we can make plastic be better for the environment?
Yes. So before I answer your question, Ruandi, I'll continue what Roshan mentioned, the waste management hierarchy, right? So the waste management hierarchy, this is applicable for plastic waste as well as any kind of waste. So this is basically the simple way to show that how we should handle waste, starting from the best option to the worst option. So in the waste management hierarchy, we have refuse at the very top, and then we have reduce. After that, it comes reuse, and recycle, which are still good, and then only we go for recover and dispose, right? So, which are the last and the least options. But many people think that recycling is the best option for the waste management systems. But as I mentioned you earlier, in the hierarchy, we have many more other options. If we cannot adopt with these options, then only we can think about the recycling process, right? But recycling is still it's good because it changed the form of waste into a something useful, and also it help us for the circular economy as well. So coming back to your question, yes, of course we can transform plastic into environmental friendly materials. Again, I'll get an example from the textile industry because in the textile industry we have a technology to convert used PET bottles to polyester yarns, right? So Sri Lanka already we have a facility to convert this. I mean, for this process, eco spindles. At Hirdaramani, we use this recycled polyester fabric to make t-shirt for a marathon program for one of our customers. The special feature of this product or this garment is that the traceability and the transparency we added to the garment, because each t-shirt has a QR code the customer could scan, and they can get lot of information about the particular garment, especially about the recycled fabric. So they can see, they can get the information about how many plastic bottle used to manufacture the particular garment, and also where in Sri Lanka those bottles were collected. So the traceability is up to that level. So this is Rwanda, this is just one examples. I'm pretty sure that we can get many more number of examples from these recycling processes. So I think with the correct innovation, with the correct technology, we can transform plastic into a eco-friendly or more sustainable materials.
Lovely. Thank you, Leonie. I think from the discussion that we were having so far, there's one element that keeps popping up, and that is the human element. We are in the middle of the problem, and we are also the solution. Nishshanka, if I turn to you, I know like a lot of initiatives get started, sometimes they continue, sometimes they don't. What should our approach be as Sri Lanka to make sure that the initiatives are not just ad hoc, but more long term?
Yeah, Randi, let's first look at in a different angle. People don't have any plastic problem. We only have the problem, few corporates and few of us having the plastic problem. Most of Sri Lankan don't have plastic problem. Why? They have so many other problem. So the environment is the least priority for most of Sri Lanka. I would say 95%. So we are trying to cultivate something that people don't want. Plastic is cheap, is reliable, and is good. So we are spending so much of million of dollars to cultivate a mindset to change their behaviors. They don't. So my first question, my if you look at the zero plastic vision, so we want to make problem to the plastic industry. So that's the solution. I'll come to the initiative, but I need to share my learning on this, right? So we have 3 avenues. What we are trying right now, spending money, doing awareness, it's good. What people don't want, people like to go alone and take a shopping bags, take lunch sheets, PET bottles. They don't have problem. So number one, we need to have our own policy and bans. That's the biggest problem that right now we are having. Look at EPR. It's waiting on the ministry's table for years. Right? EPR needs to be mandatory. It's now voluntarily. That's one thing. The other thing, I spoke to the IG, Inspector General, and I requested how many prosecution they have done in 2022 in the aspect of environmental violation. So if you get the numbers, it's per police station, 1 case throughout the Sri Lanka per month. Per month, 1 prosecution in all the police station. So 4,000 across the country. So I think prosecution or the taking legal action of the law enforcement, as Roshan said, is the compulsory thing. So number one, we need to look at to implement to make problem to the plastic. If we say don't use lunch sheets, if it is banned and if the law enforcement is there, you can't use it. And then people automatically go for the alternatives. And then there will be innovation for the industry. Right now, there's no innovation. Why? There's no need. There's no need for innovation. So I think the first thing we need to make problem to the plastic industry by making so much of ban and policies. Second, compliances. So the corporate is anyway bound to the global economy. If the UN tourism say, okay, we want the hoteliers to be zero plastic, they have to follow. So I think the second thing we need to look at the compliances and standard certifications. So right now what happened, people who reduce plastic, I know few hoteliers, they are literally zero plastic, but there's no recognition. They themselves come and say that we are zero plastic, but nobody recognizes them. So I think second thing, implement kind of a standard and compliances for the corporates, and they have a kind of a requirement to do that. So that's the second thing. Third one, the health hazard of a plastic. So you get microplastic because of PET bottles. If you use if your broom is plastic, every time you use it, it produces microplastic, and your little child will breathe it, and it will end up in your lungs, and you will definitely get some sort of diseases. So this third one is the highlight the health hazard of the plastic and make people decide what they are taking in. So those are the three things that we work on. I'll come to the initiatives. So to address in all of those concerns, we want to be the social pressure group for the government and the corporates. So 3-4 areas that we are working on. Your question itself, what I do. So number one, prevention. How you can avoid using plastic. You should feel using PET bottle is not good for your health. You should feel using a plastic broom is not good for your entire family. You should feel that using lunch sheet is not good for your health, not good for the environment, not good for the wildlife. So then the prevention. So prevention, we need to do so much of initiative to make people aware about it. So if I highlight a little bit, so many corporates do awareness. I think we never go and see a doctor if we don't have any problem. To meet a doctor, we need to have some sort of a problem, symptoms. So likewise, right now, what the problem is, people don't know there's a problem. People don't know there's a plastic problem. So we need to highlight, we need to do so much of awareness. Doing the awareness, you can't expect the behavioral change. It's a challenge. That's why we need the law enforcement and the health hazard. Then only people change their behavior. And second, removal. The number one is the prevention. Number two is the removal. Right now, everywhere, there are so much of plastic. And when the rains comes, it's floating to the canals and then to the river and then to the oceans. So then we do beach cleanups, right? So removal. I think we need to work on so much of removal, initiative on removal. Yes, it's not the answer, but it has to be done. Otherwise, it will be ends up in the environment, in the ocean, and it will come back through the food chain. Small fishes eat microplastic, and small fish eat another big fish, and big fish is taken by us, right? So the third one is the reduction. Prevention, removal, and the reduction. How you can reduce your plastic consumption. When you go shopping, take a reusable bag. When you go out, have your own water bottle. You get my point, right? So, and you don't need to have a lunch sheet. You need to have your own lunch box. So likewise, there are so much of opportunities, so much of products freely available in the environment that we can reduce 30 to 40% of plastic consumption. So those are three things that I need to highlight. So keep doing that initiatives. I would like to add one more thing to the question, Ruandi, that I have seen that, so many corporates, not so many corporates, bigger corporates do so much of ad hoc initiatives. And I have seen that even in the questionnaire that people question on that, whether doing ad hoc projects, can we fix the plastic problem? Again, my answer is different. Even ad hoc project, if somebody doing a good thing for the environment, it is good.
Thank you, Nishshanka. You spoke about initiatives, ad hoc, long term, mid term. Shanez, if I ask you, we always say what gets measured gets done. But this also seems to be the issue because sometimes things go unmeasured. And then, of course, we have issues with reporting, with transparency. How should Sri Lanka approach this? And how difficult is it to measure?
I think Nishshanka, gave some very valid points. Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts being the leading hotel chain in Sri Lanka, we identified that plastic pollution is a problem. Not yesterday, not last year, but a couple of years ago. This is very momentum for us because I think in terms of the tourism industry, we were the first in this nation to kind of spearhead this project and this initiative. I would rather keep it as an initiative and not as, really a project, because we kind of made sure that this was set out in our governance process. It has to be built into our people's DNA. It's not a one-off project, Nishanka, you were talking about. It's good. But we wanted to make a considerable difference as the years went by. And at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts, when we look at, 6 years plus now, I can very proudly say, the teams have, really achieved a great goal of from a double digit to a single digit per guest night. Now, how do I know that? Is because when we started off 6 years ago, we started measuring, we started identifying everything. We divided back of house plastic, guest facing plastic, and we decided we wanted to go with guest facing plastic first. And we identified the inventor plastic. And then we decided, okay, how do we tackle this? So we needed a framework, right? We needed funding because a PET bottle versus a glass bottle, well, there's a considerable increase in price, right? But as a responsible hotel chain, we decided, no, we have to do it because this is where we needed to go. So we understood the world of plastics at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. And over the years, we have introduced strategies to reduce, right? It was not really, we had recycling, we still have recycling for certain elements, but the highest contributor is the PET plastic. So we decided, okay, PET we need to eradicate, and we are almost there, right? We have introduced glass bottles across Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. And even the guest amenities, we have gone into pump bottles. So as a result, the grams used by a guest per night is on a single digit, right? So how did we do that? We have a very strong governance process. So when we look at the governance process, I could think, well, this is the way our nation also needs to move, right? We need to know, first of all, how much of plastic is there in the system. How do we deal with each type of plastic? What do we deal with first? Where is the funding coming from? Who are the people who are going to drive this? Who are the stakeholders? Who drives accountability? Where's the transparency? Where is the reporting? So at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts, our plastic usage is tabled to the highest committee, leadership committee, along with the other KPIs. So to that extent, we have given importance of driving this problem away or maintaining a certain level, right? In terms of building the DNA, it's important because if you take even the leisure industry, we have high turnover. So over and over again, we need to ensure that the people are educated, there's awareness, and then we look at people who can collaborate. So if you take, we have collaborated with Zero Plastic, wonderful, a wonderful piece of work they have done for us. We have collaborated with John Keels Holdings Plastic Cycle. We've done a lot there. We've taken the awareness programs to the communities that we are located in. Very important. Our communities must know, because in the tourism industry, why do tourists come to Sri Lanka? They want to see the beautiful nation of Sri Lanka. And I think the highest percentage are for the beaches. So our beaches must be very clean. So our communities must understand that our beaches must be pristine. While I agree that beach cleanups are necessary, very important that we stop the pollution or the plastics rolling into the ocean, right? And as such, I can give an example of we implemented ocean strainers, again with John Hughes Holdings and MAS. And we have it in 3 locations. And actually, it's a community that's involved. Collecting this plastic on a daily basis from the canal, and it doesn't get to the ocean. So, by no means, it's not, and no individual can drive it alone. It's not a corporate that can drive it alone. But we need many, many people. We need the nation to come together to drive the plastic pollution down, away. I can give a couple of, examples. We have quite a bit of innovations that go on in our hotels. Our general managers are so keen that, Nishshanka, I don't know whether you remember, I shared this example with you. We have in one of our Maldives properties umbrellas, No, Maldives are, tiny islands, right? Where do they dispose, right? Umbrellas that get, after some time, they break, right? And what do you do with it? We can't just send them to a landfill. So one of our dear colleagues had a great idea. They made out of the umbrellas beach bags. And our guests bought it. And we bought bottles which are not plastic. And we actually gave it to the nearby schools. So those children will not be using plastic bottles to school. So you can see how, the entire circle, gets captured and eradicating plastic. So it's very important that it gets measured. It's set out in policy. But I think as a nation, what would be the biggest challenge would be the data gap. How do you measure it? So that I really don't have a clear-cut answer. But for the corporates, yes, corporates can measure because we are in a very secluded locations, right? So measuring is possible. But as a nation, we need a strategic plan. We need a plan to measure. We can't have data gaps. We need technology coming in to help us to detect where plastics are, to report on it, etc. And most oftenly, not every year, but every month maybe. How do we do that? Well, we need more solutions. Yeah. So measurements are important.
Thank you, Shanez. We've had a fruitful discussion around ending plastic pollution. We've established the severity of the problem. We've talked about the challenges with basic things, even like goal setting. But we've also talked about initiatives and solutions and the need for compliance and collaboration. Thank you very much for all of you for sharing your thoughts with us. And if I thank you individually, thank you Shanez Wijesinghe, Vice President, Sustainability, Health and Safety, Data Privacy and Quality Assurance at Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts. Thank you, Roshan Narasinghe, who has worked as the Deputy Chief of Party of USAID Ocean Plastics Reduction Activity. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us, Leonie Vaas, the General Manager Sustainability at Hirdaramani Apparel, and Nishshanka Silva. Thank you very much, founder of Zero Plastic Movement. It was lovely having all of you. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Until next time, take care.